Hello, and welcome to the Central Coast Poetry Show, and I'm your host, Jim Russo. Our featured poet tonight are Pushpa MacFarlane and Joe Navarro. First, I'd like to tell you a few facts about Pushpa MacFarlane. Pushpa admits, I fell into poetry and would like to remain there, and I believe that. Pushpa has participated in group poetry readings at the Trianon Theater in downtown San Jose with themes of Allure of Farms, Ekphrasis, and also Poetry Cafe, a reading of coffee poems which she produced. Pushpa organized a world poetry segment at the 2015 and 2016 San Jose Poetry Festival, where 8 to 9 poets read language poems and their English translations. She read a poem in Hindi and the English translation, and she has read on poetry podcasts. She participated in a group video recording of Bullwolf and has read her poems on the air at KKUP 91.5 FM. Pushpa edited and arranged Third Thursday Volume 3 of the Willow Glen Poetry Project series, and she edited the anthology Remembering. Some of her poems have been published in these local anthologies: Shared Light, No Ordinary Language, Song of Los Gatos, Verbant Words, Censura, Perfume River Poetry Review, Spring Mother Tongue, and her artwork was published in the summer issue number 7 of the 2014 Catamaran Literary Reader. And I'd like to welcome you, Pushpa, to our Central California Poetry Show.
Thank you, Jim.
It's nice to see you again.
Thank you for having me here.
Now, what I'd like to ask you is if you could reiterate a little bit on the your editing and putting together the anthology Remembering.
That to me is one of the biggest and most complex project that I took care of, and part of it was I was part of the reading at the Willow Glen Books, and thanks to Jean Emerson, because that's who, she invited me to read there, and I met all these poetry friends that I have now. And in 2008, when the economy tanked, the lady who owned the bookstore, she was going to sell the place, and it really hit me hard because I had lost my job at the time too. So I really felt that, and I wanted to do something to, for her to commemorate that long history of poetry reading that she'd had at the store. And so I asked Jean, I said, Jean, I really want to do this. If I could ask people to send maybe a couple of poems, and then we can put them together and do an anthology. And mind you, I'd never ever tackled that before, but I really wanted to do that. And so she said, yes, why don't you do it? And she would publish it through her Jacaranda press that she had. Uh-huh. So it was, it took a little time. It took a few, couple of years maybe. Some people were getting fidgety about it, but I felt that this is something I have always wanted to do but never done it, and I feel very happy that it came out well. And also the San Jose Mercury News, I went there to say that I want to do a release about this thing. They said, I told them a little bit about what I was doing, and they said, you know what, we'll send a reporter to interview you and the lady who owned the bookstore. And my picture was on the Mercury News, so I was pretty thrilled. Right. But the whole thing just has given me an added oomph and given me some courage to keep, pushing in that direction.
Outstanding, yeah. Well, you did a great job.
Thank you.
Keep going. Now, I asked this question of all the poets that I have on the show. Of all the poems that you've written, do you have a favorite?
Well, right now, this is a favorite poem of mine, and I had written it in 2010 or something like that, but I had written about my mom, and my mom passed away 2 years ago, and I feel that every time I read this, I just feel like I can deal with that loss a little bit more, and so I've picked this as my favorite poem for just now.
Okay, what I'd like you to do, Pushpa, is read that poem first,
sure,
as you step to the podium, and then give us more.
Sure.
We want all you have.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pushpa. Pushpa MacFarlane, please.
A passing phase. There's a little quotation by Philip Levine. Give me back the moon with its frail light falling across a face. And suddenly, in a flash, I see my mother's face, younger by several years, as I have seen her in photographs, as I remember her in my teens, slender, elegant, youthful, extremely feminine, her cascading hair tied loosely in a careless bun, her feet unslippered, ready to pirouette, even though she doesn't know how, her movements carefree, nimble, her bangled hand gathering the trail of her silk sari into her waist, jasmine on her hair, exuding a sense of our native place. How different we were then, how similar we've become now in our quickening years, where words fail us more than tears. Give me back the moon with its frail light failing across her face. Give me back the days lost to my childhood, now fused with a memory that gradually fades. A house full of memories. I mourn the house I was born in, where I lived my childhood dreams, where homework was the hardest thing that worried me. I sometimes yearn to go back, relive the past to see what it would be like living the way I did then. Me, my grown-up self, looking at my younger self, wondering if perhaps I might have been wishing or fantasizing then the life I am now committed to live. Appreciating polyester. Wrinkle-free, the pleasure of not having problems with creases, ironing and smoothing out wrinkles, puckering, uneven hems. Smooth, silky polyester, unruffled and carefree, resistant to heat and pressure. In my troubled state, when I cannot cotton on to what wears me out most, I suddenly appreciate polyester. There's a couple of laundry poems here. Catching my breath. Invisible, like turbines spinning at fast speed. Nothing is seen, just the shrill, snarly sound of turbulence as it spirals its concentric circles into a vortex, gathering momentum faster and faster. Deafening, no earmuffs to muzzle the sound of takeoff to the distance. We spread ourselves thin over the years. The faceless quiet endured, the heart gathering weight like a wet, soggy towel, absorbing the water flow, keeping up appearances. Nothing visible, just like the clothes in the turbine washer, invisible, wrung around in circles till it is out of breath, the sound of speed, colorless. Out of touch. Soon I will forget the softness of whites just out of the laundry, the warmth of cotton kerchiefs bordered in pastel gray, hemmed at the edges in fine herringbone. I smooth down the wrinkles on the clean white squares, fold in half, press down in quarters. As I stack them to the top drawer of the oak dresser, the rush of Old Spice brushes on me, like pollen on the back of bees darting out of a flower with a sip of nectar. The rustling, the soft murmur, too quick to stop. The memories out, unstoppable, unforgettable, and so out of touch. Perennials. Like the iris from last year's blooms, you lay dormant in my mind, buried somewhat deep down in fertile ground. I now turn over as if to plant tulip bulbs for springtime. In the dark folds of midnight, I see you hide behind the moon, your shadow lit by sunlight. I catch the gleam on the tip of the spade as I dig a handful of earth to cover your memories with perennials. Thank you.
Thank you, Pushpa. Now, I would like to introduce you to my next guest, Joe Navarro. Hi, Joe.
Hi, how you doing, Jim?
Fine. Joe is a poet, a creative writer, teacher, social activist, husband, father, and grandfather. Originally from San Francisco, Joe has lived in Oakland, Denver, Hollister, and now lives in Hayward, California. His original interest in poetry began in 1971 upon hearing a vinyl recording of The Last Poets. He later had the opportunity of meeting and hearing Amiri Baraka, whose lyrical and revolutionary style of poetry inspired Joe to write poems. Joe wrote his first poem in 1983, Thank You Mexicano, Mexicano, I Am So Grateful, which received a great deal of positive feedback and was published in the chapbook entitled Reflections of Atzlacion in 1987, and I know I messed that word up. Joe's poetry has been published in 7 chapbooks and 4 anthologies. He has also been included in online publications, including La Blaga, Poets Responding, The Black Commentator, and others. Joe's inspirations include The Last Poets, Beat Poets, Amiri Baraka, Sonia Sanchez, Margie Domingo, Lalo Delgado, Advanchka, William Carlos Williams, and others. And with further ado, I'd like to introduce you to my friend, Joe Navarro. Hi, Joe.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. I'd like to just listen to you. Tell me anything you'd like to talk about. How's that?
All right. Well, as I said, originally I was from San Francisco, and when I went to high school, I was expelled. So that
Me too.
interrupted my formal education. And a lot of what I learned was mostly through personal interest. So being able to meet poets was very inspiring to me. I had the fortunate opportunity to meet Amiri Baraka, and upon hearing him read and recite, brought something out of me that I didn't know I had. I didn't have much formal education, so I had to learn techniques and all that pretty much on my own and through emulation. And I was fortunate enough to share a stage with him in 1986 in UC Berkeley
Wow.
and Alurista. And so I've had numerous opportunities to meet other poets along the way that have also given me inspiration and have affected the style that I've chosen to write over the years. Most recently, an anthology was published this year called Poetry in Flight, Poesía en Vuelo, that included Francisco X. Alarcón, who is also a very well-known poet who just passed away, by the way. And he passed away before the project was terminated, so it took a few years for it actually to come together. And a lot of it had to do with the idea of en vuelo, in flight, the idea of a mariposa, which is a butterfly. And the butterfly, the monarch butterfly, as you know, travels from Canada to Mexico, across the United States, but it doesn't have a passport or legal documentation.
Right.
So it represents the idea of
No borders.
no borders, exactly. So I was really proud to be a part of that project, and also something called Poetry of Resistance last year, which was Voices for Social Justice. And once again, it had to do with the poets speaking out against the injustices against undocumented people and the things that were happening in Arizona.
Yeah. Well, that was very personal for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I come from my family is both United States born and Mexican born. But everybody, my mom and my father, were of Mexican ancestry. So their ancestry goes back through Mexico, through Spain when it was a colony, and through the Aztec and Mayan traditions as well.
Wow. It's just a long history, long heritage
Long heritage.
that
Yeah.
Mexicans have that we don't give them credit for.
Right. A lot of us think of us as foreigners, but we're actually in this hemisphere.
Long before
This
all
is
of us.
where we originated.
Absolutely.
so to speak.
Absolutely. Yeah. They're finding now artifacts that date that,
Yes.
so it can't be disputed. Well, what I'd like you to do. I always ask every poet this question, if I remember. Of all the poems you've written, which is your favorite?
Yeah, my favorite is Sin Idioma, which literally means without a language. Once again, language comes into play because I grew up in a bilingual family, and I always joke that I'm actually trilingual. I speak English, Spanish, and Spanglish. That's the way my family speaks, and I've sort of inherited that tradition as well.
Right. I've heard you. Yeah. Well, with further ado, I'd like you to go to the poem, or to the podium rather, and read your favorite poem and what else you have.
All right.
So,
Great.
ladies and gentlemen, Joe Navarro.
Sin idioma. Sin idioma. Cuando era niño, hablaba español con mis padres y con mi familia. Era muy contento y feliz. Pero cuando asistí a las escuelas, me forzaron a hablar el English. Y con el tiempo se me forgot el Spanish. Con golpes y con vergüenza, yo he aprendido to speak English bien. Hasta el primer grado, no podía speak very good con mi abuelita y se enojaba mucho. Hasta el sexto, no sabía what language que estaba hablando. I was going to the tienda with my carnal. I was changing my calzones every day. My mamá was always wearing her chanclas. My teacher was a pinche way. I was always fighting with the babosos, and I hated the gabachos. When my mamá was mad at us, me and my carnales were pendejos. My tías used to gasp when I told them how I went chingazos. Híjole, qué confusion. They confused me in school, cut me off linguistically from my family, made me stop speaking Spanish, and didn't teach me English. Now, I'm illiterate in 2 languages. She came to America from France. In the New York harbor, she stands tall, holding a bright torch, inviting all who seek refuge, shelter, and a better way of life. Reminding the world of the gateway to an immigrant nation where multiple languages have been spoken and cultures have been celebrated. She is an immigrant herself from France, without documents, not even a passport. Yet she is a symbol of America, a nation of people who came here from somewhere else. She stands as an immigrant, inviting immigrants to live in harmony and peace, representing the good-natured values of people who want everyone to live well. She is an immigrant from France, erected as a monument to liberty and justice in a nation of settlers who have slammed the doors shut to immigrants of unwanted places in the world. She has no papers that declare her American or legal resident, yet she is celebrated and praised as the greatest symbol to American freedom. If she could speak, would she speak French or English? Would she say, "Bring me your huddled masses only if they come from Europe but nowhere else"? Or would she raise her torch for everyone to see and cry for the world to hear, liberty and refuge for everyone? I call this back. This is just a rant. If they send everyone back to where they came from, where will all the gringos go? Black lives. Black lives, it appears, seem to matter less daily. Black lives extinguished, witnessed by millions electronically while mothers bare their shredded hearts, pleading for justice, but cops walk free, snickering, knowing their crimes will not know conviction. From Momentary Peace, this is an observational poem about homelessness. She rose from her frigid dreams as warmth, bright and yellow, began to peek over the shadows of slumber. Ice daggers slowly melted from her torso and limbs as one fist rises and declines, head weaving and bobbing, words flowing like a raging river, bundled in numbing cold vapors. carrying each word as the sun rises slowly. She argues intensely, passionately, as she does every morning. When she is severed from her momentary peace, nestled in unconsciousness, all that she is unleashed in a fury of expletives, sung in sorrowful prose. She curses the neglect and instability that rules her life, against the officials, the neighbors who want her invisible, against the empty, warm spaces that she cannot occupy, against the unwillingness to see her and offer her a warm bed with a roof over her head. She argues furiously with what she has left of herself until she can argue no more. This is a poem dedicated to Heather Heyer, her last breath for justice. Heather Heyer had awakened believing she would stand for justice in Charlottesville, Virginia, knowing in her heart that white nationalist bigots were fundamentally detrimental to this nation. John Brown must have whispered freedom thoughts into her dreams before this day, while justice overcame her fears of personal harm. Heather Heyer intended to hurt no one, let alone being hurt. She must have wondered if she had the courage to stand up to racist, violent fanatics. I wonder if she was able to kiss and embrace her mother's love during her last breath for justice as the charger plowed into her. Did America see a foolish, idealistic young white woman or a freedom fighter who intended to live to tell about her heroic stand in defense of peace, justice, democracy, and ending national oppression? Love for humanity, compassion, and passion, anti-racism, anti-fascism, embodied in the unintended heroic act as the world watched, leaving America to mourn while celebrating the life and ideals of a human being for social justice. I close my eyes, a love poem for my wife of 42 years. I closed my eyes in that moment, which felt like a lifetime. I froze in time in the emptiness of my thoughts while I severed my senses, filled with emotion and passion, uninterrupted by transgressions that surrounded my physical world. In that moment, I was free of injustice and sorrow. I retreated from the threshold of insanity that draws me near in that moment when I closed my eyes so I could only, without distraction, savor your delicious kiss.
Ah. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Joe Navarro, folks. Now, I'd like to read a couple poems from my book. And actually, this is my favorite poem. It's titled Kids Ruled. In the mid-50s in North Beach, Washington Square Park belonged to everybody. Green wooden benches and green grass. It belonged to the gays on their corner of Stockton and Filbert, with their white spider monkey and Siamese cats on a leash, joking, laughing, and touching. The monkey laughing too, shelling peanuts. It was trippy watching it climb up and down their bodies. They wore tight blue Levi's with wide cuffs and tight white t-shirts. They were a happy bunch, and skinny. It belonged to the old Sicilian women on their corner of Stockton and Union, dressed in black under the shade trees, talking quietly, saying more with their looks, their hands busy praying with rosary beads or knitting or both. The topics were babies, the children playing, family, the old country, the church, and food. If you didn't speak Sicilian, you missed the nuance. They loved to squeeze the children's cheeks using both hands, their dancing black eyes searching deep into their young souls. It belonged to the young Italian women, bunched together on their benches on Union in the sun, mostly mothers, usually pregnant, speaking English, a parking lot of baby buggies and strollers. Their paths weren't hip, they were the bystanders, talking about babies, husbands, boyfriends, movies, and food, while they watched their children play in the park. They collected all the popular records and liked to dance. wearing summer dresses or skirts with matching blouses, with silk scarves tied around their necks. The scarves smelled like hairspray and perfume. They were the good girls. It belonged to the old Sicilian men wearing their fedoras and wide ties on their corner of Union and Columbus, their homemade Dago red hidden nearby. Nanu would call his grandsons over, interrupting their play, to meet new arrival from home. He would introduce himself, name his village, and kiss each young face through a thick fog of Dago red. The boys would kiss the stranger. If you were related, that's the way it was. The old men talked about Sicily, babies, family, fishing, and food. They were careful what they talked about. Their wives across the park were lip readers or psychic or both. It belonged to the beatniks, lying on the grass in front of St. Peter's and Paul's. They read books out loud and sometimes looked upset. They were poor with only one cigarette to pass around. When they laughed, they were hysterical, and it went on forever. They brought their lunch to the park, formed a circle, and had a picnic. French bread, cheese, bottled beers, and books spread out on a blanket, sharing that one cigarette. Their chicks were hot, wearing tight skirts and tight sweaters, in primary colors with matching silk scarves around their necks, and no panties. They wore bright red lipstick, smoked cigarettes in public, and wore cool, pointed shades. On every sunny day, the park really belonged to a half a dozen young Italian boys, ages 7 to 10. They mingled with everybody. They fed the monkey peanuts, they had all the old women squeeze their cheeks, they knew all the mothers, aunts, and cousins, and the old men who loved every one of them. They teased the beatniks and made them laugh. Each person in the park might be talking, arguing, laughing, reading, resting, or thinking, but all were aware of the young boys, running, playing army, playing tag, or playing catch. Young Jimmy discovered the chicks wore no panties. He was born club-footed and tripped on the grass when he ran fast. He fell near the chicks one day, looked up, and saw his first pussy. The boys called a meeting at the swings. They had a plan. They would move near the beatniks, throwing the football. Each boy would make a diving catch and lick up a skirt. The chicks caught on after the fourth diving catch. Bobby was caught adjusting his eyeglasses, so Chelsea and Bebo had to wait a week. Okay, thank you for watching Central Coast Poetry Shows. Tune in next time and I'll read another one.